Bria,
Aaron, how's it going?
going good. I'm really excited about our upcoming online classes together on self-directed education and being. I'm trying to remember the title of our stuff.
I think deschooling and
Yeah,
facilitating self-directed education,
right.
especially for parents and facilitators. It's really fun for me to have these conversations because you get so many different scenarios from each parent.
Right.
Um, Everyone's kind of going through something different, but also has some similar tensions coming up. That's what
Yeah.
I found.
So
Yeah.
just to remind people, so you and I both do a lot of supporting families and learning center facilitators, people in general. I also work with schools a fair bit, but places where adults are trying to find ways to support kids in ways that are more kind of self-directed and equity-based or mutually respectful of kind of need and et
Hmm.
cetera. Right. And you're absolutely right that um, the scenario, the challenges we all come up with, the nice thing is they all seem to have kind of the same solution, which is cool in
Yeah.
a way, which is kind of, I use the term like rethinking adulting, right? Like just rethinking, wait, what is our role here and what are we supposed to do? And
Mhm.
is that really what I should do?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, and those societal norms kind of nag at us because we're so conditioned to do a certain thing that we think that those are the supposed to's. And then sometimes there's just this like almost fighting of what society thinks you should do compared to what you feel is right in your own relationships and what works for your kids.
yeah. And I feel like that's actually a really good segue into one of the things we see a lot. This one's not something that parents or adults will often bring up on their own, but I think we
Mhm.
both find that when we point it out to people, they go, "Oh my gosh, yes, I totally do that."
Yeah.
And that's what I call talk blocking, or like putting ourselves in the position of kind of managing relationships for kids.
Mhm.
Especially, I find when it's like our kid that we're responsible for talking to another adult in our presence.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
we feel, and I felt this as a parent and as a teacher or learning facilitator, when I feel responsible, like in the eyes of the other party for this person, I'm constantly feeling like I should be nudging that kid to like this is how I'm supposed to be teaching them how to interact with another human by saying like, what do you say when somebody says hello to you, right?
Mhm.
Instead of allowing that child to go through the process of trying to identify what do I want my relationship to be with this person, how do I set that up, how do I um, yeah, how should I respond? And I feel that we're not only robbing kids of the opportunity to practice how to relate and how to be in charge of their own relationships, um, but we're also maybe convincing them that they're not capable of it at the
Mm.
same time. And I wonder what you think about
Yeah.
like, that whole thing.
Well, sometimes I wonder if it's more about our image as people and the image that we think our kids are supposed to put out there and that we think we're supposed to put out there by teaching our kids these manners or rules of society. So we make it more about perception of even like strangers that does it really matter what strangers think of us? And we're
Yeah,
not being, especially adults, I think are so trained to not be their authentic selves a lot of the time in favor of image. So it's almost like we're putting that on the kid, like make me look good by being a well-behaved, responsive kid that
right.
says, please, thank you,
It will
instead of being
reflect
yourself.
poorly on me if
Right.
you don't, or even if I don't really care what you say in this situation, right? Um, I want to at least look like I'm doing my job of
Right.
teaching you. Like I
Right.
think we think that adults are expected to teach kids how to behave in social situations. And so we feel like we'll look like we're not doing our job as society deems our job if we don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
which is basically just restating what you just said, but yes.
Yeah.
I fully agree. And I've caught myself in that, and I've actually worked with teachers in full on, kind of prep school situations where actually even gotten them to realize, oh my gosh, yeah, a lot of the times my pressure on kids in their projects is not to benefit their learning, it's to make it look like I did my job in getting them to do what they were supposed to do. To the
Yeah, I mean,
point of sometimes teachers even kind of doing the project for the kids, right? Hey, look what they did. I did my job. And I
well,
think
it's
we
built
do that as
their
parents.
system.
Yeah.
Like they get money for the school based on grades, and they get retained or fired or whatever based on the kids' grades, right?
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you do what you have to do to make that kid succeed, get a grade,
Right.
if that's built into your system?
Yeah.
Another thing that came to mind is you also have to know your kids. So sometimes I do respond for my stepson because he asks me to, in a way. So he still gets the what grade are you in question. And the first time he ever got the what grade are you in, he looked up at me with this like confused look on his face, being like, what grade am I in? Can you respond for me? And I said, I have no idea. I've never known what grade anyone's in. He doesn't have grades at school. And he's gotten that over the years, and sometimes he looks at me and I respond, and sometimes he responds. But it was like a couple weeks ago, someone at the store asked him, and very confidently, he was like, well, I don't go to a regular public school, so we don't have grades at all. And just told them that, and like learned how to be confident and tell the truth as opposed to kind of dodge the question, I think, by seeing what I told people, because I was really honest with people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's, I really like that idea of maybe even, of kind of having that conversation with kids about, hey, what role would you like me to play in those situations? And I think a great way to maybe model vulnerability and kind of honesty with our kids too. And when I say our kids, whether it's students or whatever, or our own children, would even be to say, hey, you know what? I've noticed that I kind of step in for you in conversations. And there's a couple reasons I think I might do that. One is that I kind of feel like society expects me to, and that I'll look like I'm not doing my job if I don't. But the other one is sometimes I wonder if maybe you feel uncomfortable, and then I'm kind of rescuing you. And I wonder what you feel about that and what you would like to happen in kind of those situations. And maybe even if there's a signal of like, left ear is I'll take this one and right ear is, could you step in or whatever. But even just letting kids know that we reflect on our own kind of roles in their life, and we're not sure if we're doing it in the way that is totally best for them. And that we want to make sure that we're kind of a team together on how to figure that out. And so maybe in the effort of, because knowing you and I, we could actually record like 14 hours of this topic and all the ones that come off it. But in the idea of this being kind of an example of the kinds of things we'll talk about in our online workshop, which everybody should sign up for. What do they do on the YouTube videos? Comment below and
subscribe.
Yeah. Anyway, it's just maybe one of the things that we'll do in the workshop too is to kind of suggest exercises for people to try at home, or just things. And maybe it would be good to just notice and reflect on like, hey, pay attention for a few days. Do I do that to my kid or my kids? And then maybe like have that conversation and see what that feels like and how that goes. And any other kind of like homework tip that you think might be good for people to think about or try relative to this?
I think it's with any of these situations, kind of as you said, the first step is noticing. Like think about what you're doing that doesn't feel right, or a good indicator, at least in my experience, is when there's tension or your kid's getting really upset. The tension is showing you where maybe you're uncomfortable with how you're treating that person, or they're uncomfortable with how you're treating them. So when there's tension or pushback, or frustration from the kid or frustration from you, that's a really good moment for myself, at least, to like analyze it and be like, where is this coming from? am I upset because I'm not treating this person right? Or like, what's their underlying need that I'm missing? And what's my need, and how do those come together?
Yeah,
So that places of tension are good places to notice and reflect. And luckily, the more you do this and the more you talk about it with your kids, and the more they, or other kids that you're facilitating with, and the more they start to trust you that you're really like in this to partner with them, the more they'll bring it up to you. So they'll point things out to you. My stepson's favorite phrase in that vein is, "Why are you being a normal parent?" is what he says to me. Stop being a normal parent. So that kind of reminds me of, you know, what's happening and how he feels about it.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you brought up that idea of kind of paying attention to need, right? And that's a
Mhm.
mantra actually that that I use a lot, is like, whose need am I serving right now? To just kind
Yeah,
of run in my own head, sort of like, well, do I even know what their need is? Or
right,
do I think I know what their need is and I'm trying to
right.
expose it? Or like, they don't even know what they need, right? The common adultist phrase, right?
Hmm.
Anyway, so we'll totally be talking about that need thing throughout all of that, comes up in all of the topics, right? Um, and another one, just a little teaser into the kinds of things that we'll talk about too, is just, you know, what if, for instance, we are, you know, we have a kid, we're with a kid that says, well, you know what, I'd love for you to speak for me all the time. Right? So that's a great opportunity to have the conversation of about like, oh, that's really interesting. And I'm happy to like help, but I wonder, I'm just curious what that's about for you. You know,
Yeah,
and that idea of, can we build a relationship where we trust each other enough to challenge each other a little bit and say, hey, I wonder, like, do you want to be able to? Is it that you're kind of uncomfortable or don't know what to say? And just try to get at what's underlying that and see if there's, just make yourself on offer to be a partner in helping them stretch themselves, and to
hmm,
make sure that if we're doing that, that we're equal about, and equity will come up a lot as well, right? In inviting them to help us challenge ourselves,
right.
right? Oh my gosh, we totally could go on for 52 hours.
I know, we should
Okay, so
pause.
let's wrap it there for this little segment, yeah?
Yeah.
And then hopefully we'll see lots of people in the classes and we can together have lots of these conversations. So everybody, see you soon in, hopefully in our online classes, or maybe some of our in-person workshops. And we'll see you when we see you. Thanks, Bria.
Thank you.